2 centuries ago, 1799, the German theologian Friedrich Schleiermacher wrote a book. And I know if you're here for the first time, I do not always start sermons by referencing German theologians from the 1700s. But he wrote this book with a wonderfully snarky title called On Religion, Speeches to Its Cultured Despisers. In other words, on religion, you people who reject it, thinking you know so clearly everything that's about and why it's so dumb and how none of it makes sense, you don't actually know what you're talking about. German is a very compact language. What he says is essentially this. He says religion is an experience. It's not what you think. It's not even really what you do. It's not about doctrines or dogmas. It proceeds from an experience. And however much we might argue over the silliness or relevance or accuracy of doctrines or dogmas, that experience is real. Here's what he says. He says, religion is the outcome neither of the fear of death nor of the fear of God. It answers a deep need in humanity. It's neither a metaphysic nor a morality, but above all and essentially an intuition. It's a feeling, he says. Dogmas are not, properly speaking, part of religion. Rather, it is that they are derived from it. Religion is the miracle of direct relationship with the infinite. And dogmas are the reflection of this miracle. Similarly, belief in God and in personal immortality are not necessarily a part of religion. One can conceive of religion without God, and it would be pure contemplation of the universe. That was 1799. And our Unitarian and our transcendentalist ancestors embraced those ideas and ran with them. Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1836 gave the commencement sermon to the graduating class at Harvard Divinity School, which was a class of all Unitarian ministers. And I think they invited him because he was sort of the headliner of the day. He was the big name. But when he got there, he spent what to my eyes is a very long sermon, essentially chastising them all for wasting their time in church. I have to thread the needle very carefully, this next part. But what he says is, among other things, go and acquaint people, acquaint humanity, go and acquaint men at first hand with deity. In other words, he's saying, do not rise to the pulpit to give some secondhand reports about what it's like, but instead inspire in everyone, in all of us, direct experience. The same thing that Schleiermacher's talking about. Go out and experiencing it yourself, the miracle of direct relationship with the infinite. That, he says, is worth so much. The church I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, he served for a couple of years, I think in either the late 1820s or the early 1830s. Emerson, I could be getting my history wrong, but what I know for sure is at the top of the order of service when I was a kid, you'd open it up, and right at the top, there was a quote, a little epigraph from Emerson. It said, I like the quiet of church before the service begins. I like the noise of church before the service begins. This is sort of a little passive-aggressive. I found out the full quote from this is actually, I like the quiet of church before the service begins better than any preaching. Because again, his whole point as a transcendentalist and as a huge influence on our tradition is, it's not about the words, it's about the experience. And if the words have value, they have value in stirring us into that experience and exploring that experience and reflecting it. The first of our 6 sources, along with our 7 principles, we name 6 sources that this living tradition comes from. The first of them is direct experience. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. We use different words to talk about that transcending mystery and wonder. But I think Emerson would have been right at home in it, Schleiermacher too, though I don't know if he spoke English. The point is to experience first, and then find the names. To experience and then enter into this conversation with tradition and history and theology and others. Maybe, like Ursula Goodenough, you find yourself a religious naturalist, belonging to the story of the universe, belonging to the interconnected web of life and existence. Each of us little bits of the universe looking back at it. Faith isn't an intellectual exercise, it's an experience. Ursula Goodenough says, the realization that I needn't have answers to the big questions, needn't seek answers to the big questions, has served as an epiphany. I lie on my back under the stars and unseen galaxies, and I let their enormity wash over me. I assimilate the vastness of distances, the impermanence, the fact of it all. I go all the way out, and then I go all the way down to the fact of photons without mass and gauge bosons that become massless at high temperatures. I take in the abstractions about forces and symmetries, and they caress me like Gregorian chant. The meanings of the words mattering not at all because the words are so haunting. Mystery, she says, mystery generates wonder, and wonder generates awe. The gasp can terrify, or the gasp can emancipate. And as I allow myself to experience cosmic and quantum mystery, she writes this, as a religious naturalist who does not believe in any supernatural, anything more than the material of this world, she says, as I allow myself to experience cosmic and quantum mystery, I join the saints and the visionaries in their experience of what they call divine. The sacred depths of nature aren't conceptual, they're experiential. And they don't just happen to you. You can find them, you can go searching, you can go looking. I love always this line from Louis Pasteur, who invented pasteurization. He says, science proceeds on chance, but chance favors the prepared mind. I feel like that too. Wonder favors the prepared heart. Awe favors the prepared spirit. You put yourselves into situations where it's likely. As a kid, sometimes on a Saturday afternoon, my dad would say to me, let's go on an adventure, and we'd go tromping off through the conservation land, which is what we called open space in Boston, to explore a marsh or a path, or that second growth forest rising up around the old stone walls falling apart where there used to be fields. We'd see how far out across the reeds in the marsh we could get once the water froze solid. We found a snapping turtle shell once that must have been 2 feet across with a fair amount of snapping turtle still inside it. And so in the expanse of this many-acre unmarked marsh, we noticed the spot and promised we'd come back in spring once the shell was clean. But what we were doing there, because of course we never found it, what we were doing there was wondering and wandering. We were slowing down and looking closely and wondering. What is this? Are there really turtles this big in all of the marshes we walk through? Do we need to be more careful? What does it eat? Where did it come from? How many of its siblings are still out here somewhere? What does it do in the winter? How does it grow so big? What are the colors in its shell? The rainbow of browns and grays and blacks and greens. Rachel Carson says one way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I had never seen this before? What if I knew I would never see it again? That's the practice. That's a prepared mind and heart. To slow down and look close and ask, what else is there here? I read about awe walks. This is AWE, awe walks. In, of all places, the Harvard Business Review, which was not where I expected to find awe and wonder. Awe meaning the amazement that stops you in the presence of something vast. Awe which confounds your notion of the way things are and lifts you into another realm of thought and feeling. Well, in the Harvard Business Review, I think they needed to justify the importance of awe and wonder with appeal to facts and data, so they talked about these fascinating studies. It turns out wonder lowers your heart rate. It turns out high levels of awe in life correlate to high levels of satisfaction in life. It turns out that when a person experiencing awe has a brain scan under a functional MRI, so you can watch what parts of the brain are lighting up when you experience awe, it turns out that the parts of the brain that do self-talk and ruminate, you know the part of your brain that plays like the greatest hits of your failures? Right? That slows down. Like when you go outside during a good snow and everything's quiet. That's what awe does inside you. The Business Review speaks of the outcomes of awe. It expands our mental models and stimulates new ways of thinking. It facilitates scientific thinking and ethical decision-making, all of which is lovely, but I also think it matters not just because it might make you a better employee. It matters because we're human beings, and what it is to be alive and embodied in the world is to be curious and fall in love with it, connected to the whole, discovering it firsthand, right in front of you, anywhere, everywhere. In the Bhagavad Gita, the god Krishna explains what he is. The god Krishna is there, blue-skinned, appearing before a mortal who says essentially, what are you? And he says this so wonderfully. He doesn't give a list of attributes. He doesn't give a description of where he came from or the state of being or his relationship with the cosmos. He says this. He says, I am the taste in the water. I'm the light in the sun. I'm the beauty of the beautiful. I am sound as it moves through air. Meaning, of course, that he's none of those things exactly, but that all of those things are part of him, or that any of those things is a way to access the holy, not set apart and somewhere else, but right exactly here, all around us. A randomized controlled trial of awe walks showed an increase in positive emotions and a decrease in daily distress. But the piece of this that I loved so much in the research that was published is going out on an awe walk. They gave very simple instructions. Take 20 minutes. This does not have to be a huge commitment. Set an intention to notice new things. And then wander and be curious. In the study, they had participants document their emotional states and take a selfie on the walk every day. And they saw this delightful thing. You know, it started and the selfies were like this. And then as this 8-week trial went on and on, the subject got smaller and smaller in the picture. And they measured this. The researchers said they thought this was ridiculous and the outcome would never happen, but they measured the pixels of person every day. And they got steadily less, steadily smaller and smaller in the frame, which seems like a healthy thing, right? Putting us back not at the center of everything. Chance favors the prepared mind. Awe favors the prepared heart or spirit. Take an awe walk. Set your intention to notice new things and ask what else and what else. Wander and be curious. Slow down. Go searching. Look close.